Welcome to the Scoop World Order. It is Thursday night, the best day of the week. The bank chat is going strong on BuckeyeScoop.com. We have a huge update from the Oracle on the future of the Big Ten. Some new contenders joining the mix. Looks like to join the Big Ten. I think the Pac-12 is at its death knell stage, and there are teams that are just trying to jump into the best conference in the country in the Big Ten, the most profitable and the only coast-to-coast country. So some major players are jumping in. Oracle is all over that. He's at the forefront of expansion, along with Nevadabuck, who originally, multiple years ago, broke that USC and UCLA were sniffing around joining the Big Ten, and guess what happened? We broke that they were coming to the Big Ten. So it's been a wild ride with the expansion. We're also going to talk about a superstar running back, the number one running back in the country for his class, coming to visit Ohio State. We're going to watch his film, break him down a little bit. He's a fantastic player, and he has absolute lightning in his feet. He can scoot. So I think you guys are going to love watching that. So with all that being said, as always, thank you guys so much for tuning into this. If you click like, that would be huge for us. Click subscribe. Also, click that little alert bell if you want to be notified when we go live. I see you guys are starting to pour into the chat. Appreciate you guys. What is up, Dave? Appreciate you as always. But love you guys being on here with us. BuckeyeScoop.com is the community for you if you love Ohio State content, because we are cranking like crazy on that. So we are going to be on that all night, talking expansion, combine musings. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on at the combine. So we're going to get into that. So without further ado, I'll bring in my good friend at Nevada. Nevada, how are you?
Doing great. Big stuff happening on a Thursday. Spring football's days away. Yeah, it's a great day of the week. Great day to be on Buckeye Scoop, and glad to be here.
So expansion has been one of those things that you've broken more than anybody in the industry on expansion with the USC and UCLA stuff, which was a seismic atomic bomb that you dropped. And now, we brought in Oracle, who's a guy who's got great sources. We're at the very top of college football. Talk a little bit about some of the stuff that Oracle sees coming in the very near future regarding the Big Ten and acquiring a couple of big name programs from Pac-12.
Well, yeah, expansion's been something that's really been a bread and butter for our site. And as you said, we brought in the Oracle, who's really, a highly connected guy when it comes to all things Big Ten office, conference expansion, musings, etc. But, the latest news, it's latest, we've talked about this before, but it's starting to happen, is that Oregon and Washington are definitely becoming more of a possibility to a probability in terms of joining the Big Ten. They've indicated their willingness to join under this new media contract, but to take a decreased share until they can kind of earn a full share at the end of the television contract. And this pretty much indicates being the end of the Pac-12 as a conference. And I think that they're really in between the Big 12 poaching some of the members, the Big Ten coming in and taking at least a couple more. I think the Pac-12 is going to cease to be a conference, and that's kind of a seismic shift. Once USC and UCLA left, which were their flagships, they were really in trouble. They've got weak leadership, and at this point in time, the Big Ten has no leadership. But once that position gets filled and resolved, I would expect to see Oregon and Washington making a move under kind of an enhanced deal. And if you think about what that means, think about the streaming company. The streaming companies right now control Thursday Night Football, which nobody ever thought would ever be streamed, as opposed to being on a cable channel or on a network channel. Now what they want to do is they want to go to a Friday night and a Saturday night window streaming. So basically you'd have streaming on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, which would be West Coast broadcasting on Friday and Saturday night from, formerly the Pac-12 conference. And that would create kind of a new college football window, as it were. And for the streaming companies, give them kind of a block for 3 days where they'd be late at night going with pro football first, then 2 nights of college football. So lots to talk about, lots of exciting things. And I think Oregon and Washington are shoo-ins to end up in the Big Ten. And boy, that sure changes some things and creates some more premier matchups for teams across the conference.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's exciting to think that we're going to get out Washington, out Oregon in the mix. I think that, it's always fun to go out to those road stadiums, like go out west. Again, I was fortunate to play at Washington my senior year. Beautiful stadium, beautiful area of the country. And frankly, if I wasn't a football player, I probably never would get out that way. I played out there against the Seahawks when I was with the Bears. And I also played, obviously at Ohio State, but it's always fun to go out to areas and watch a football game. Like, I mean, I know our fans love to travel. Like they traveled heavy to Cal Berkeley. They love going to the Rose Bowl. I've obviously going to play UCLA, going to play USC. Those are going to be marquee games. And then the flip of those guys coming into the shoe. The Oregon game was a premier ticket. USC in '09 was a premier ticket. I love those matchups. I think that it adds a lot of like spice and zest to the schedule as opposed to just being the same mundane, similar programs. The Indianas, the Purdue's, like kind of the bottom of the Big Ten, the Rutgers. I'm excited about it. Like I said, I think that Phil Knight is an absolute genius. I think that his final, he's mid 80s now, so. Yeah, I think he's not gonna in his final chapter, he's not gonna let Oregon get left behind and everything. So he's gonna use all the muscle he can to get them into the Big Ten and make sure that they're secure for the foreseeable future. And I think that that's a program on the rise. I think that Ohio State playing out on the West Coast does nothing but help the brand. So again, the more times we can get out there and kids can see the Ohio State logo and those helmets in the Rose Bowl, in the Coliseum, in Altson Stadium, I think it's just great for the brand. Nevada, what of the new teams are you the most excited about? I imagine it's SC, but what is the most exciting thing to you about the new Big Ten that's getting this influx of West Coast teams?
Well, I mean, SC and UCLA, obviously, and those teams speak for themselves. But I've heard a little bit of talk, and I've heard people kind of denigrating Oregon lately, kind of like Oregon's not a big ad to Ohio State. They don't play the brand of football or the level of football that Ohio State does. And I'm like, do you guys forget that they just came into Columbus 2 years ago and just ran us right off the field? I mean, like, I understand I'm as arrogant an Ohio State fan as there is on the planet, but like, let's not denigrate Oregon too much. I mean, those guys came in without Thibodeau, without one of their other good players, and just absolutely smashed us. So, look, I mean, Oregon's not on our level, but they play good football there, and the facilities. If you've ever had the opportunity to take a tour of the stadium or the athletic facilities at Oregon, I mean, it's jaw droppingly good. It's just you can see why that program's on the rise. You can see why that they're positioned well for success, and I think you said it really well. Phil Knight's kind of the final chapter that he wants to write because his legacy is to make sure that Oregon is in a big conference, safe, secure, with a great future, and they're going to have a terrific endowment from him. And I think they're a great ad. And like I said, Washington's a sleeping giant. Washington's been great. Hasn't been great as of late, but they can be again. So no, I couldn't be more excited about the ads, and I think it just positions the Big Ten, as you said, to be a true coast-to-coast conference and really the powerhouse conference in college football. That's a great thing for everybody, a great thing for us as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it like coast to coast, east to west, but even north to south. I mean, you go down to Southern California, and then you go all the way up into Oregon, Washington State. I mean, you got to crisscross the whole map when you get those clumps in. It's just, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with some of the rivalries like the Apple Cup, Washington State, which I don't really care about, but that obviously could go away pretty quick if you've got, you're joining the Big Ten and we're playing 9-10 conference games, and you got to, leave a former rival behind in a lesser conference. Because again, it's just like one of those things where there's like there's the pretty girls, and then there's the ones that get left outside behind the rope at the club, and that's kind of what it's like. Like Washington and Oregon are kind of leaving behind Oregon State and Washington State just because they're not nearly as prominent. They're not nearly as high tier as those schools are, and that's kind of where it's at. I mean, the allegiance and the loyalties are all dead. We saw it, when Texas broke away to the SEC, Oklahoma, the SEC. I mean, they left up behind a conference that they'd been in for a long time, and it's just a fascinating way. Do you think that is the end of it, Nevada? Is Notre Dame on the horizon further out? Is there more Pac-12 teams trying to get in? What are your thoughts on that? And what would a timeline be for any additional schools to join the Big Ten?
Well, I mean, the Oregon-Washington thing could happen sooner than people think. I mean, that could happen, 2024, 2025. I mean, that could happen really, really fast. As for will it be the end? Absolutely not. I view Notre Dame as an inevitability that they end up in the Big Ten. And I think, when you start talking about more exciting prospects, you start talking about what I view as almost an inevitable breakdown of the ACC, because you've got some big prizes there. You've got North Carolina, you've got Virginia. I think Florida State has made incredible strides from an academic standpoint. I mean, Florida State is not a joke academically anymore. They made some huge investments in there, and Florida State would. You talk about that north to south thing. You imagine you go from Southern California to Oregon to Florida State to Rutgers to Ohio. I mean, really, you'd have a true coast to coast conference then. I think Georgia Tech could be in play as well. So no, I think it's not over yet. I don't think it's going to be over until you probably get to like 24. I think 24 is probably the magic number for the Big Ten. Ultimately, they got to make the numbers work for it. They got to make all the math work, and maybe not all the teams are taking a full share, but I think ultimately that's the way it's going to work. And I think the next 10 years you're going to just see a flurry of activity, but starting with Oregon, Washington as the first dominoes to fall, with the Pac-12 going by the wayside.
And then the teams that you didn't add that are obviously bigger players down there, the Clemsons, the Miami of Florida, those types of schools, you just assume they end up in the SEC, correct?
Yeah, I think those are more SEC type schools. I think for the Big Ten really wants to go with schools that obviously contribute from a football standpoint, but also from a research and academic reputation standpoint, because the research consortium that you join when you're part of in the Big Ten is no joke. And that's why they've always looked for these conferences that are research-funded institutions and AAU members, and they're looking for people with great academic reputations, and that's what makes the university presidents willing to vote yes on these schools. And all the schools we talked about are all AAU members, and that makes them possible candidates for Big Ten expansion, because that matters as much as the football.
Do you think Florida State pushing for AAU status is critical for them to join the Big Ten?
I think it's absolutely critical, and I think there's a reason why they're doing it. I think it's all part of their plan to join the Big Ten. I think that they're looking at that, and they realize that without an AAU membership, that they're really not going to be considered. And I think if they get that, they're able to secure that. They're willing to make the investments to get up on that level that the Big Ten would consider them, and I think it's all part of that plan.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think it's going to end up being 16-team playoff, 24-team conferences, and it's going to be like the NFL. It's going to be the SEC versus the Big Ten. It'll be like the AFC versus the NFC, and then it's going to kind of be may the best win. Is it going to be 8 from each side? How does it work out? Does a new league emerge that's like a kind of between a 1AA and a 1A? It's going to be fascinating. And does the NCAA just dissolve at some point? Because what when I interviewed the commissioner of the Peach Bowl, one of the major things that he pointed out is that college football is the only major sport that does not have a commissioner. They just have an NCAA that's kind of toothless and hapless, and then you have conference, the commissioner of the Big Ten, the commissioner of the SEC, but you don't have one overruling commissioner like the NFL has Roger Goodell. The NBA had David Stern, now Adam Silver. So that'll be interesting to see if they ever agree to do that under one giant umbrella, because that I think would be beneficial, because it would level the playing field from a rule standpoint. That's something I always hated about being at Ohio State, is that we just we always kind of killed ourselves. When we had the COVID stuff, we were testing our guys to death, and guys were contact tracing, and we lose Tommy Togiai for the national title game because of COVID, which is silly. And then, Alabama doesn't lose anybody, and that really hurt us. And again, I don't think that would change the game at all. I think Alabama still would roll us, but when we do stuff like that, or, when I played, we just drug test guys to death. So guys would trigger positives, and then they'd kick a couple more positives, and they'd be suspended or off the team. And, most teams in the SEC didn't drug test at all. Or if they did, it was once in 10 years or something. So, our guys would get popped, and I just never thought it was fair. I think that it should be one uniform body, and everybody should be subject to the same strict standards. But that's just my opinion. And I'd love your thoughts on that, Nevada. Do you think that college football, if it goes to the 2 super conference model, needs a commissioner to rule everybody?
I think it's absolutely an imperative. I think you have to have a commissioner. I think you need to have a strong guy, because a strong commissioner really is what gives teeth to these rules. Because a strong commissioner could come in, and if people are people always like to say, oh, they won't follow the rules. They'll trick them and they'll do this. Hey, if you have a strong commissioner, if you had a Jim Delaney, that was the commissioner of college football, he'd come in and slam some people, and once they got slammed, they wouldn't start flouting the rules nearly as much. So, no, I think it's absolutely an imperative. I think you're going to follow the model of the successful organizations in sports, and the successful organizations in sports have been the NFL, the NHL, Major League Baseball, where they've got a strong commissioner role who can kind of rule on these things, and their their word is the final word on all disputes. They act as kind of the Supreme Court, and that's it. And I think that will happen. I think it's inevitable. And as you said, the NCAA has really kind of outlived their usefulness. I'm not even really sure what they do anymore, what their function is. And when somebody can't clearly describe what your function is, and you're in the position where you're taking in billions of dollars, I think you really have to look at yourself as being on life support. And I think that's what the NCAA is right now.
Yeah, I think that would be the greatest benefit. I mean, I know that you thought David Stern was a good NBA commissioner, but you see the power of what a good commissioner who's a strong commissioner can do for a league in terms of, making sure everybody plays fair, making sure that there's a certain level of decorum, there's a certain level of conduct, and if you break that, I mean, you've seen Roger Goodell smack teams over Spygate and tampering and things like that. Draft picks, suspensions. That's what's missing in college football right now. And so people can act with impunity because they're allowed to. And I think if they up the discipline a little bit, I think it makes the game a lot better, a lot cleaner, and honestly a lot more fair. Because that's the one thing that's tough is sometimes teams get penalized for playing inside the rule book. We are going to shift gears a little bit to a really, really good young running back. Kid named Gideon Davidson. He's out of Lynchburg, Virginia, Liberty Christian Academy. He's going to make a bunch of visits to Ohio State. Looks like he's going to come in for spring. He's going to come in June. Really, really quick kid. Not huge, 6 foot, $195. We're going to turn his film on here for you guys. We're going to start watching some of it. But yeah, here, let me get this rewound. Apologize. Oh, this is my defensive tackle. I'm going to change this. I apologize. But yeah, Nevada, I think, when you think about running backs, is there like a prototype for you? I know that, Trey pretty much was the prototype that me and you both agreed was about perfect. But is there a bigger guy, smaller guy, better in the passing game? Is there something that you look for more now than before?
Well, I think it's funny because I think the Big Ten, the traditional thinking has been in the Big Ten that you need a big running back. You need to kind of have a guy that can operate in the bad weather and the inclement weather, and I think that's why people have kind of the legacy of Ohio State's always been some of those bigger running backs, the Eddie Georges and even the Maurice Clarettes, or the guys that are big, that can, the Keith Byers, that can kind of bowl through the line and get the big yards when they need it. But when you think about the importance of the passing game right now in college football, I mean, from my standpoint, what you really need is that guy that kind of that do it all back, that guy that can run in between the tackles, but can also take it outside, and most importantly, can catch the football. Because Ohio State's a passing team, and whether we like it or not, or hate it or love it or whatever, we are a passing team. As long as Ryan Day's here, we're going to be a passing team. We're committed to being a passing team. So what's the ideal running back for Ohio State? The guy who's got the jets, who can catch the ball out of the backfield and present a threat from the running back position as the mismatch against any of the defensive backs. And I think that's what Ohio State's looking for. I think that's what Ryan Day's looking for. And right now, if you're a running back looking at our depth chart right now, hey, we can all talk about how the room is loaded right now. The running back room is absolutely loaded this year. But next year, wide open depth chart for anybody who's wanting to step in. And a couple of years from now, it's really, really wide open. So, I think running backs, we're going to be, we missed in this recruiting cycle on a running back, which is really, no bueno. But what does that mean? It just means you got to recruit some guys next year. And here's a guy who could be right at the top of the list and going to be making a couple of visits to Ohio State, and he's got a genuine, legitimate interest. from an area where we went out and got Trey Henderson, so that never hurts. And I think Ohio State's in the driver's seat.
Yeah, we've gotten Curtis Grant was a Virginia kid. His teammate Derek Green was a kid that was, by most the number one running back in the country. He wasn't by Stan Drayton, who picked Ezekiel Elliott over him. So that was a great call by Stan. Ezekiel's out of Briarcrest, I believe, in St. Louis, a small little Christian academy. But yeah, the interesting thing about like when you evaluate these kids from Virginia, for instance, like when we watch Derek Green's film, you kind of have to figure this is bad ball. Generally, Virginia isn't great football, but does he dominate? Does he make people miss? Does he run guys over? How is he in a full game tape as opposed to just a highlight reel? And this kid, he's special. Again, this is not Georgia football. This is not Ohio football. This isn't Texas football. But, when he gets the ball, he's out. So, that was something with Derek Green is, we would watch some of his games and, his stat line would be 156 yards and 3 touchdowns, but it'd be on like 35 carries or something crazy. And I'd be like, well, how is he only averaging like less than 4 yards or right around 4 yards a carry for, against bad competition that he should be destroying? And you look at the O-line and the blocking's fine. He didn't really have the burst. He looked like the Incredible Hulk. He was a really nice kid, but you got to look at, do they dominate? If they're a lesser competition guy, do they dominate like Leakin Keenholz did in South Dakota? That kid dominated, every game that we watched, and he looked fantastic. And that's what you need to do. If you're playing lesser competition, you got to be a dominant player. And here's a kid, they show him making picks. Again, he's a really quick kid. He's a powerful kid. Out here, they got him making a tackle. So he plays both ways, which I actually love when a guy plays both ways because, there's a lot of kids now that only play one way. And I think if you're a good athlete, you should be playing both ways in high school. Like you're never going to get tired playing a high school game. And he's a shifty dude. O-line is killing these guys too, so that always helps. But yeah, I mean, I think he's got a big ceiling. I think we got to take 2 in this class. I mean, literally, we didn't get a single running back, and I don't think there's ever been a class in the history of Ohio State football where we didn't sign a linebacker or a running back. But this is it. But yeah, what do you think, Nevada? I mean, I don't think he's Trey Henderson, but he's pretty good. He's quick. I'd love to see him against better competition, but this is the best we can do for right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's but look the 2 things that I always look for, and it doesn't matter what the sport is, whether it's evaluating a hockey player, a young hockey player, or a young football player, or young basketball player, whatever. Is kind of that short area quickness, his ability to kind of separate from other guys, and secondly, is his compete, and that's a little hard to measure on this, on a tape. But you talk to the guys, and that's why, like I said, having guys that like to play both ways, guys that like to play special teams, guys that are playing early, playing a lot of different sports, then that they've got a high compete level, and that's always a good sign. This guy checks all the boxes, certainly well regarded, and his coaches and teammates speak very highly of him as well. So no, he's certainly high on Ohio State's list, probably right at the top of Ohio State's list. So that's there's kind of a mutual admiration society going on between him and Ohio State, and that might make for a really good marriage for him, and that'd be a great get for Ohio State.
Yeah, so he's a class of 2025, so he's a rising junior. So this is sophomore year film. So guys like this can gain 10, 15 pounds in muscle as they lift, as they get deeper into the weight room. Again, I think that he's got major upside. Again, you can see the jets. I think he's got great vision too. I love his cuts. He's patient. Again, this is a highlight tape. I know that. But, as Nevada knows, like of all the traits you evaluate on running backs, like vision is, if it's not number 1, it's number 2, maybe behind elite quickness. But I mean, talk a little bit about why vision, like for you, Nevada, is so important. Because again, like, Master Teague is a great kid, fantastic measurables, like a 4.3 40, the fastest shuttle at the combine last year, fastest L drill, in terms of pro day, 39-inch vertical, something crazy like that. And he didn't get drafted, and he was a practice squad player who was on injured reserve all year. But talk a little bit about vision, because I'm just kind of saying that because if Master had a deficiency, it was his vision by far. And I think it cost him being a quality NFL back, at least initially. But what are your thoughts about it? Like, how important is it to have vision, and how important is it when you see vision at such a young age as a sophomore on this tape?
Well, I heard a really, really interesting take from a guy talking about vision, and vision. When you think about vision, traditionally what people think of vision is that it's some sort of like visual thing. It's like it's about your visual perception or your eyes or how your eyes
Mhm.
see things. And what this guy said is, he goes, no, when we talk about vision for, again, for hockey players, for basketball players, for football players, what it is, everything in sports runs in a pattern. There's patterns. Like in basketball, when this guy comes here, that this guy goes there, and then this guy's out here, and this guy's open. Or in hockey, when this guy comes here, this guy's out here, and this guy's out there, and he's going to be open. And it's your ability of your mind to process patterns and recognize patterns, and then know where the opportunities are going to be as a result of that. So it's really a mind processing thing as opposed to an eye processing thing. And some guys just have it, and some guys don't. And you can tell the guys that have it, it's their ability to process what they're seeing on the field and instantaneously know, because of what they're seeing, because they've seen it before, where the hole's going to be, where the hole's going to open up. And it looks like it's almost supernatural, but it's really the mind just playing over and over again, like a poker player playing hands that they've seen before, because they've seen that run of cards before, that pattern of cards. That's what makes up great running backs. And I always thought that was really interesting. But yeah, when you're looking at that, you're looking at its mind and intellect as opposed to eye processing. And if you have it, it's magical. And when you don't, boy, it's no bueno. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think spatial awareness is a good way to describe it. Just like how people play in space, how people have a feel for the game. Again, I think hockey's a great analogy. There's certain guys that can kind of see the ice, even if it's in their periphery, and they can still make plays. And running backs are the same way. It's like when they get the ball, can they kind of feel the blocking and cut back, kind of like water, like cut back to where the soft spot is in the offensive line. You're like, where's the crease? Where's the double team at? And I think that that's something that makes great running backs. Like Antonio Pittman had exceptional vision. He could, take an inside zone play and wind it back to the double team on the backside, where, a lot of those runs that, you think that it's like Madden and you call like a front side zone play and it's going right in the A gap. But, a lot of those, can wind back behind in the old I formation game, it would wind back behind the backside double team, just because that's where the big punch was, the big crease, because he had a 2-on-1 block. So you got to move that guy out of the way. And, it's kind of like the front side of the power game. With power, it generally is coming out the front door. Zone, a lot of times when I played, would come out the back door, just because we'd really pulverize guys on the backside, and the running backs could feel that, and they cut all the way back to it and hit a crease. So, yeah, I think it's spatial awareness and just having a feel for, how your blockers work. I think that's something that a lot of running backs, professionally and in college talk about is, they got to get their reps and their turns in with the starters, with the new O-line, just to kind of see and feel, how productive are these guys as run blockers. And that's something that, this kid, if you start off with high spatial awareness, I think that it gets easier for you. But it's a trait almost like having rare speed. It's something that it's hard to teach. I think you can get a little bit better at it, but some of it is just a natural ability and feeling. And this kid has it. Like I really like watching his film, and we'll burn through it one more time. But Nevada, who are some of we talk vision. I think that the best vision guy I've ever seen on film from Ohio State was Maurice Clarett, just because I watched his film ad nauseum, that 02 tape, just because I was getting ready for 03. I watched a lot of the coaches' clinics, and he would see things and feel things when or obviously early in the season when he was destroying everybody. His vision was just incredible, and that also applies to being a pass protector. But who are some running backs that you think have had exceptional vision over the past few years at Ohio State and maybe some professionally?
Yeah, well, at Ohio State, I always thought Keith Byers had terrific vision. I thought, he had that in the pros. He had that in high school. He had that in college. And, as big and strong as he was, when you combine that with that vision, that's why he was, so absolutely special at Ohio State. For other guys, the guy that I always thought was unbelievable vision was LaDainian Tomlinson. He was a guy that just had absolute feel for the game. Could just go out there every time he got the ball. He just seemed to cut the right hole. And it's funny because it's like the definition of pornography. When they asked the Supreme Court, they said they know it when they see it. It's when vision, you know it when you see it, because you can see some guys that just intuitively are always in the right spot, always going for the right hole, always doing it, and then other guys that are just running to darkness. And, while you say it can't be developed, it's, I thought Carlos Hyde early in his career at Ohio State was just awful at doing it. I mean, he used to just run into the backside of guys. Boom Heron used to do that as well. And I think over time they became a little bit more patient. They became a little bit more attuned to what was going on. And actually, I mean, what did Carlos play like 10 years in the NFL or whatever it was? So I think he figured out the vision thing pretty quickly. But yeah, it's fun to watch a running back that's got great vision, and when they're working in concert with a great offensive line and a good scheme, it's magical to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I played with Frank Gore in San Francisco, and his vision was unbelievable in the running and in the pass protection game. When you see some of those guys and they can see things happen before they happen, it's just like I said, it's a rare trait. It's like a Connor McDavid kind of trait where he can see guys when they're not there yet, and it's just kind of like a magical thing, and that's why they're so productive because it's like a sixth sense. But yeah, like I said, I like this kid. I thought Ezekiel obviously had exceptional vision just because of how he could find holes, hit them. And then, when you're a kid like this, like Gideon, who's got the Jets, that is where you really can exploit that hole, because if you can see it, feel it, and then you can get there and get through it and split safeties, that's when you're in the big money. And that's something that Ezekiel was exceptional at when he was at Ohio State. Oh man, what a great film. Good looking kid. I really like him. Are we getting any questions in here? We've had a bunch of these questions on here. Yeah, people are saying Antonio Pittman, Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon will forever be one of the funniest players ever to Nevada and I because, I got reports for camp that year that he was the best player in camp. And Nevada got very similar reports. And I was like, man, this guy's going to be really good. And then for like the first 10 games of the season, he didn't play, or he got like 10 snaps or whatever. Then they put him in for that stretch, and he becomes like the greatest running back in Ohio State history for like 3 games. Nevada, what do you remember about the Trey Sermon stuff? Because I always found that hilarious that people were saying he's unbelievable, and then we get to the first game and he doesn't start, doesn't play. But what do you remember about that?
Well, I just remember getting abused on the message board about my Trey Sermon love. People were like,
Oh
"Oh, you
God.
love Trey Sermon? You must be his daddy or something like that. He sucks. He's terrible." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm telling you, if he gets his chance, he's way better than Master Teague." And they're like, "Oh no, Master Teague's big and he can carry them back, and he's a Big Ten type of back, and Trey Sermon's a Big 12 back." And I mean, those things would go on ad nauseum, and it's like when you're right, you're just right. I was not going to give that one up. I knew Trey Sermon was the real deal, and then Trey Sermon goes on and puts the greatest back-to-back performance, owns the school record for rushing. It was just a beautiful way. When he was going, man, that was fun to watch. I mean, that Ohio State offense was just fun, and he's a legend at Ohio State, and one of the great all-time memes of all time there as well. With his little eye roll, the little look up the camera. But no, I love Trey, and Trey was all about vision. Actually surprised he wasn't a better NFL back. I thought the San Francisco 49ers drafting was a perfect spot for him. Didn't quite work out, but no, I love Trey, and we'll ever, like I said, I was going to go down with the ship on that one, man. If Trey sucked, man, I was going to take that one, much like the Tate Martell thing, take that abuse for years to come.
Yeah, another guy that was like that for you was Rod Smith. Rod Smith played literally 8 years in the NFL, and people were like, "You said Rod Smith was going to be good," and I was like, 8 years in the league is pretty damn good. I mean, he played for the Cowboys for a long time, Giants. I think he was active up till last year. And that was a guy that, he kind of shot himself in the foot. Urban kicked him off the team for something stupid, but the guy, talent wise, the NFL didn't care if he did something that got kicked off the team because he stuck on the Cowboys for 7-8 years, made millions of dollars. What do you remember about Rod Smith? Because Rod was a really nice kid. He's just a little, he did some dumb stuff sometimes, but he's a really good kid. But what do you remember about Rod?
Oh, boy. I mean, he was talented. I mean, he was as talented a running back as we've had at Ohio State. And when he was going, he was jaw-droppingly good at Ohio State. People have no idea. We only got to see a glimpse of it. Like you said, it kind of came and went. It was there, and then boom, he was gone off the team, and things didn't quite work out. But no, he was a special player. And I bet we saw 50% about as good as he could have been. And he could have been one of the all-time greats at Ohio State if he had his head on right, but wasn't quite to be.
Yeah, it's always fascinating because like Boom and Brandon Sade played ahead of him, and and I love Boom to death. Brandon's a great kid, but Rod had a better NFL career than both of them combined, which again it just speaks to the level of talent that the kid had, and he's a tough kid because he made it mostly as a special teamer in the NFL. Had a couple spot starts, had a couple nice touchdowns, as Ezekiel's backup, but it was always like one of those. One of those ultimate like what ifs. Nevada, what are some of your guys that are the ultimate what ifs? Now that we're kind of on this subject, 'cause I think it's always interesting. Guys, throw this in the chat. Who are some of your what if guys what if Louis Irizarry? What if Sheon Cotton? Who are some what if guys for you?
I mean, there's always, Chuck Jones, Buster Howe, Corey Pargo, Torrance Gibson, um, Tate Martell. I was on a good thread today on the board just talking about like how if Myers stays at Ohio State and Tate Martell's the quarterback, what type of numbers would he put up? I still contend he would have put up great numbers, but like I said, it's all speculation because he went off and he was not good. Let's just say that's being generous elsewhere. But no, I mean, that's the story of college football. The college football is all about, it's kind of an allegory for life. Those people that kind of have a chance, you've got one moment to kind of do it. And if you don't do it, then you kind of get relegated to the island of misfit toys and shut off to the side. And maybe you're an answer to a trivia question on some Buckeye Scoop trivia game someday. But, what if? But no, there's been some great what ifs for sure. But I think for as Ohio State fans, like I said, if I had to pick the biggest, it's got to be Torrance Gibson. Now, Torrance Gibson is the one who I'm still in awe of that kid. If for fun, anybody just put on his high school highlights. And Florida football is no joke. He was playing the largest school segment of the best of the best in the high school football, and he would just absolutely dominate people out there. And world class broad jumper. I think he jumped 12.3 or something like that. And for go look at how good a 12.3 broad jump is sometime, and you'll see just how athletic this kid was. He was unbelievable. So he's on my all-time what if chart, and like I said, we only saw a glimpse of it, and that's a very sad story.
Yeah, the Tate Martell thing is it's always going to be kind of weird to me because people, they just don't realize how much a system affects a quarterback. It was kind of like when Lloyd Carr retired at Michigan in '07, he had Chad Henne and then he had Ryan Mallett as backup. Ryan Mallett was a 5-star wonder kid with a rocket arm. And if he would have stayed and played for Rich Rodriguez, he would have been a square peg in a round hole. So it's like he goes to Arkansas, is really good against us in the Sugar Bowl, gets drafted, kind of bounces around. Like he's kind of a flake, but super talented kid. And it's like if it's 2006 and Urban Meyer leaves Florida and Ryan Day shows up and he's got Tim Tebow as his quarterback. Like for what Ryan Day likes to do on offense, Tim Tebow is not a great fit. Tim Tebow won the Heisman. Tim Tebow won the greatest college, maybe the greatest college football player of all time, 2 national titles, Heisman Trophy, dominant run at Florida, SEC all-time touchdown rushing leader. But if you take away his rushing and make him just a pure thrower like Ryan Day likes, then he probably transfers. He's probably going to go somewhere where they're going to run him and they're going to do like what fits his style. And that's kind of like what it was with Tate Martell. Like Tate was a kid that, he won the National Player of the Year for Gatorade, which means you're the number 1 player in the entire country. So to say that he'd probably be good wasn't exactly going out on some crazy limb. But, when Ryan comes in and his style is drop back passer, shotgun spread pass, no quarterback run, which basically cuts Tate's legs off or cuts any quarterback, I don't know how good Braxton Miller would have been in Ryan Day's offense if he didn't get to run. If we didn't run any read option, zone read, if you just made Braxton Miller a pure thrower, I don't know how good he'd be. I think obviously, if you add his legs to the mix, he's a dynamic threat. But if you make him just a guy who's got to rely on his arm, I don't know. And that's like something that, I think that it's like how they say styles make fights. Well, offenses really can help make quarterbacks. And that's something, when you have a quarterback guru like Ryan Day who wants to do, his style of quarterback is Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud, and he's done fantastic. Those guys are all first round picks. that works, but Urban Meyer liked to run the guys. He liked to run Tim Tebow and Alex Smith. And then he had he had Cam Newton at Florida. And when he didn't have a runner, he wasn't as comfortable, So I think that it all comes down to, your situation that you're in. Again, like Ryan Mallett being at Michigan when Rich Rodriguez showed up was a terrible fit, and he got out of there. So Nevada, we're wrapping up winter conditioning. We're supposed to get some intel pretty quick here on some of the stars of winter conditioning, because winter conditioning is one of those times where guys can really make an impression on the staff, especially guys that maybe haven't been evaluated as closely because they've been playing scout team. What are you hearing about winter conditioning, Nevada? What are you excited to see as spring ball kicks off next week? Because football's here. I mean, next Wednesday, there's real football. They're going to be in helmets. The 2023 team kind of makes their debut together. It's kind of a surreal moment. But what are you hearing? What do you want to see? And what are you most excited about as we start spring ball next week?
Well, I think there's been some pretty interesting body transformations. There's been some guys that have put on some really good weight, and there's been some guys that have dropped some pretty significant weight as well through the winter conditioning. As guys are kind of eyeing kind of a different role. It might be a position switch, or it might even be just kind of a different role at the same position. But there's been some pretty interesting things kind of going on that I thought kind of caught my eye at the end here of winter conditioning. Some guys that have really obviously taken it to heart, really made some moves. And, for me, winter conditioning is really just kind of a litmus test of how serious are you about the upcoming year. And, how, when you see these guys that come in there and, drop 11, 12, 13, 15 pounds and are putting on muscle mass, or guys that put on more weight and want to do it, then that they're really kind of committed to their craft. They're really committed to what they're doing. And I think that to me is always the most interesting, things to see. Who's kind of making a move, who's kind of decided that they're no longer happy, playing just a kind of a piece role or not playing at all, and are really making a move to make it on the field, because it starts in winter conditioning. It continues on into we see all the product of it in the fall, but it starts in winter conditioning and continues on through spring ball. And that's what I'm most excited to see is who's kind of made those transitions, who's made those transformations, and who's really made that commitment to be a better football player at Ohio State.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the depth chart starts out, see how guys can get through spring ball healthy. Because again, like everybody has a plan. It's like the Mike Tyson line. Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Well, every position coach and player has a plan on what they want to get done for spring ball until a couple guys get hurt, and then all of a sudden your rotations get all jumbled up, and some guys lose their opportunity to compete for starting spots. So it's going to be fascinating to see how guys do in elevated roles. I mean, I think Kyle McCord is, ready to take the reins, and that's something I think we need. I think that, we'll see if his chemistry with Marvin picks up where it left off in high school. I mean, obviously he was a more heralded recruit than Marvin was, and they've kind of flip-flopped on that since they've gotten to Ohio State, with Marvin playing and being fantastic and Kyle being in CJ Stroud's shadow. So it'll be interesting to see, does he grab the starting job with a chokehold and not let go, or does he let Devin Brown have an opportunity? Like, that's going to be something that'll be fascinating to watch. I think that that's the question on everybody's mind is, what will the drop-off be at quarterback? Will there be a drop-off at quarterback? When we went from Haskins to Stroud, it wasn't a huge drop-off. Then CJ obviously had a great year this past year, but it's going to be fascinating because if you're proficient at Ohio State at quarterback, you're likely going to be a Heisman candidate. You're going to be thrown to the two best receivers in the country, one of the top 3 tight ends in the country. Trey Henderson's back. Weapons galore. Nice soft schedule to start up. So it'll be kind of start your engines time once the foot hits the ball in September. So we're gonna wrap this show up. Nevada, any final thoughts as we count down to spring football?
No, just circle back to what we started off with on expansion. Expansion is, man, I love talking about expansion. I think it's really an exciting time to be a fan of Ohio State and being a fan of the Big Ten. And I'm salivating at the thought of those new matchups, both out here on the West Coast as well as back in the Horseshoe. Our schedules are about to get better, more interesting, and again, look for movement with Oregon and Washington, and that could be happening sooner than later. So keep an eye out.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I think it's going to be really good for for the sport. I think it's it's going to be exciting because the thing about adding Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, and I said this earlier, is that they have to go. Once they get in the conference, they're going to have to go to stadiums that they've never been to. Like I don't know if they've ever played at Indiana or at Purdue, at Michigan State, at some of these smaller schools, smaller stadiums at Rutgers. USC would never do a home and home with Rutgers, but now, it's kind of fun to watch UCLA at Indiana or USC at Illinois because, those matchups don't happen. They'll come to the Horseshoe and they'll come to, the big, the games in Dallas and Atlanta, but they're not going to come, to some of the smaller Big Ten schools. And now they have to. That's kind of the cool thing about joining a new conference and seeing some really cool colors in stadiums that they've likely never been to, or if they have been, it was a long time ago. So that'll be really fun. So I am going to wrap this thing up. Appreciate you guys as always. Had some Brandis in and on there to take us out. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate everything you guys do to help grow this channel. Keep spreading the word. We are growing like nuts on this. So click like, shout out where you're from in the comments down below. I love when you guys let us know where you guys are from, where you're watching from, what you enjoy about the show. Your feedback is always appreciated. We read every comment and we appreciate you guys always. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. What do you want to get out of spring ball? That is my question to you. I want your answer down in the comments. So please leave me an answer. Give me some feedback. Who are you watching for? Are you excited about some of the new coaching staffs? Do you want to see that defense get shored up? Let me know. Put that down at the bottom. If you enjoy our content and you want more of us, BuckeyeScoop.com is our permanent home and where we are forever and ever. We are on there 24 hours a day. Bill Greene had his awesome chat today. Fantastic interaction. Really did a great job. Our recruiting guru. The Oracle has been just crushing it with the expansion news. He's got the latest on the Big Ten the Big Ten commissioner search. So, really good stuff. Again, if you guys love the inside information, like I know you guys do, BuckeyeScoop.com, it needs to be your new home. Again, all you guys that are already members, we really appreciate you. We really enjoy and love being on there with you guys. So hope you guys are good. I am really looking forward to getting some more of these episodes cranked up. We are coming down the stretch for spring ball to kick off, so it's going to be fantastic. So with that being said, as always, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of your day. Go Bucks.